This show is full of easy to understand information from physicians, wellness experts, and other guests who share valuable, empowering information and, most importantly, actionable steps to wellness. So let's talk about what's in store today on Her Health Matters. It's February, and when we think about February, what holiday comes to mind? Yes, Valentine's Day. We know that Valentine's Day was a few weeks ago, but it's still fresh in our minds, along with those boxes of delicious chocolates we ate, the roses, bottles of champagne or sparkling cider for those who don't indulge, and possibly those romantic high-calorie dinners that were oh so tasty treats. This may be the way that many of us celebrated Valentine's Day this year. However, our hearts might have been yearning for something else, which leads to today's theme, heart health, because February is not only home to Valentine's Day, but it's also Heart Health Month. So it's fitting for us to talk about the state of our heart and how to keep it beating stronger and better than ever. You know, the heart never gets a break. And that's what we'll be covering today in the Speak On It segment, where we'll be talking about what you need to know about maintaining a healthy heart. We're so pleased to have renowned cardiologist Dr. Deborah Krabb. For the past 20 years, Dr. Crabbe has dedicated her time to clinical work and research specializing in women's cardiovascular health. She currently serves as an attending physician at the Temple Heart and Vascular Institute of the Lewis Katz School of Medicine. Before Dr. Crabbe joins us, legendary community advocate and founder of PowerUp PAC and also a heart attack survivor, Linda Fields will be sharing her personal health journey with us. So let's get this party started. We want you to lean in, and we're going to embrace and celebrate all that promotes the health, wellness, and social well-being of Black women. But I do want you to keep in mind, you are going to hear a lot of discussion around health and wellness, but none of the information that's shared on this show should be considered as medical advice. Guests on the show provide valuable information for sure, but please consult your physician before making any changes to your healthcare regimen. If you don't have a doctor, you need to start the search now to get one, because having a doctor that you trust and having the opportunity to build a relationship is key to a long and healthy life. But of course, you know, I'm a primary care physician. I'm going to get off my soapbox and save that for another show. But as long as you remember that, yes, I am a doctor, but I'm not your doctor. So please follow up with your own health professional to manage your specific health concerns. This show is produced by Community Hero Action Group, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to close gaps in health and wealth disparities within the Black community with innovative and trustworthy initiatives and programming like this radio show. To find out more about Community Hero Action Group, be sure to visit communityheropa.org. And make sure to stick around to the end of the show when you're going to get the latest information about news, activities, and events that impact the health of our community, like the upcoming Pennsylvania Black Health Matters Conference that's coming up in April. So let's start this powerful show off with our thought of the day to get us mentally centered and ready for today's episode. As I mentioned, February is Heart Health Month, and despite the fact that we celebrated Valentine's Day, it's probably still top of mind, even this late in the month, for many of us. Some of us may be in relationships and celebrated our love, and many singles were okay being solo. But I know there's a large number of folks who had a tough time with their own mental health during Valentine's Day. And to be quite honest, Valentine's Day can be a tough time or really take its toll on our mental health, whether we're in a relationship or not. You can start getting into comparatitis, and the hype around Valentine's Day can have a detrimental effect on some women's mental health. Some of us compare our relationships to romantic Hollywood stories that we watch on Netflix or the Hallmark Channel, or, the Let's Not Forget Lifetime Channel. And other people might feel like they're under pressure from all the targeted advertising and the expectations, many of which are unrealistic. And, we can't forget about social media, how everybody's putting their best self or their fake self forward, and those representations can be really influencing our opinion of ourselves and our own lives. There can be a buildup of anxiety and discontent that really can sort of fester and grow if you don't get the flashiest, Instagrammable gift. And, if it doesn't happen, then we think there's something wrong in our relationship, or, he must not be that into you if you didn't get this big, flashy, fancy thing. And Lord forbid if you don't have a partner to even stress about whether they're meeting your expectations. And all of this can create a disproportionate amount of emotional stress in women. All of this, instead of making the day feel like it's about love, it can be a day that makes you feel lonely and makes you feel anxious and feel badly about yourself. So we don't need to beat ourselves up mentally and draw the wrong conclusions that we're somehow defective or unlovable. So whether you're in a relationship or not, we want to just acknowledge those feelings and rise above it. So saying all that to say that even though Valentine's Day was a lot about giving to others, I sincerely hope that you did not forget to give the gift of love to yourself. We have to step back and reflect on ourselves. That's what this whole Valentine's Day thing is about, right? Love. And that doesn't always have to be focused externally. It could be loving yourself first, because you really have to be able to love yourself in order to be able to give love and even receive love. To be honest, you have to love yourself. So if your relationship's not stacking up to what you see on television or on social media, there's not something wrong with you. Whatever boat you're in, just love yourself. And it's one day out of the year. Focus on the positives. Give yourself some love. There's no reason you can't give your own self a pedicure or buy yourself flowers. There's this quote from novelist, I think he had a couple of titles, but Paulo Coelho, that uplifts this sentiment. And he says, all stress, anxiety, and depression is caused when we ignore who we are and start living to please others. That's right. All, not some, all stress, anxiety, and depression is caused when we ignore who we are and start living to please others. To maintain well-being, we have to recognize, respect, and love the need to recognize our own inner strengths and attributes. We can show ourselves some love by journaling. We can write a love note to ourselves. That can be therapeutic. You can listen to some positive affirmations, and you can even combine that with your journaling by writing those affirmations. Just the more positivity we surround ourselves with, the more we begin to think positively about the world and positively about ourselves. And let's not also forget gratitude, because gratitude can really be a key component to feeling a sense of happiness. So it's not healthy to let negative thoughts go unchecked and lead to those negative feelings and stress, anxiety, depression that Coelho in his quote he highlights. We know stress is one of the key influencing factors of heart attacks in women. And I want us to all be around for a very long time. Our heart's been ticking since before we were born, and we want to keep that stress in check and reaffirm the beautiful attributes that we have and be grateful for all of our strengths and grateful for our challenges so that we can, work those muscles to solve problems and affirm the beautiful beings that we are. So, on that note, let's begin today's discussion by diving into stressors and factors that can negatively impact our heart health with a local woman who's experienced her own health challenges. And we're going to go right into that in our Speak On It segment, where we're going to break down complex and important topics for the benefit and understanding of women's health and wellness. As a reminder, you're listening to the Her Health Matters radio show with Dr. Sofia Shabazz, airing on WURD Radio 96.1 FM and 900 AM. So let's welcome Linda Fields. She is the chair and board of directors of the YWCA Tri-County area, the CEO and founder of the PowerUp PAC Foundation, founder and director of the Montgomery County chapter of the Pennsylvania Democratic Black Caucus, and so many great accomplishments, and the 2018 Democratic nominee for the Pennsylvania State Senate. This woman has done a lot and has managed a lot of stressors in her life. So let's sit back and listen to her health journey. Thank you so much for joining us today, Linda. We hope that by having you on today, the Her Health Matters family can see a little bit of themselves in you and be able to gain some really useful knowledge from your story. Tell us about your story, and thanks in advance for being vulnerable, being transparent, with the whole HIPAA thing. This is you sharing your own story. You own it. You can share it as you wish, and thank you for letting us into this private part of your life.
Oh, Dr. Shabazz, thank you for such an introduction. You don't think about the things that you do when you're doing them, as you already know, because you've done a lot of phenomenal things yourself. And I'd like to thank also Nicole Magruder with the Community Heroes, because we find ourselves in all kinds of events and programs to help educate people and will hopefully heal hearts and change lives. Where do I start? I have a family that suffers with heart disease, from congestive heart failure to people artery blockage, several heart attacks. I've lost 3 of my siblings to heart disease, my mother and my father. Wow. But it started many years ago, prior to 2003, where I started an organization called Heart to Heart after the loss of my mother. And it was so traumatic for me. She was young. My mother was young. She was just in her early 50s when she passed. Wow. And I had a little brother and sister who was home with her, and she just went into the kitchen to make a cup of tea, and that was the last thing that happened in her life. And my little brother was 8 and my little sister was 7. And they had to experience this trauma. She was in California, I was here, but it was something that was so traumatic for me. And then seeing cousins die from heart attacks, my family is riveted with heart disease, and it is because of the way we live. And it is because of traditional, what we call soul food and rich diets with fried foods and all kinds of unhealthy habits that we call good food.
Mm.
Of course, you don't know that when you're young, and so you kind of take on family traditions that you suffer. And it's not just in our culture, it's in every culture, which I learned
Mm.
as I grew and began to experience things of my own.
So we don't have a monopoly on bad diets.
We do not, absolutely not. And you discover that when you start seeking and wanting to learn and wanting to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, I started the Heart to Heart Weekend of Life that soon later became the Circle of Life.
Yes, I'm starting to notice a theme emerge
Yeah.
twice now, because you, even before that happened, it sounds like you experienced something that really was a painful experience, and you flipped that and turned that into something
Mm-hmm.
even greater, or to help, to try to make your painful experience something that other people didn't have to experience, or didn't have to experience in the same way. So how would you say that this particular loss, with your mother, how did it change you? I see it sparks you to action.
Well, not right away. Not right away, because I had to discover that I had been traumatized. That's number one, and I did not realize that. And we say people live and they die. We don't know the day or the hour. And coming from a religious family, you accept God's decision, but you don't. I don't. Well, I didn't. I can't say what people don't do, but what I didn't do is really take a real serious look at, why did mommy die like that? What happened? And why are so many of our family members on that side of my family dying from heart attacks and heart disease? And so I didn't look at it right away. It wasn't until my sister with her diabetes, and then my diabetes, and then my dad's diabetes. And then,
So, like, you mentioned about, like, that you concluded that part of why this was happening, or the major reason, was because of how we were living. So, did you make some changes in
I
your
did.
lifestyle?
I did
So,
make changes for a little while. It didn't last.
mm,
It didn't last. And when you say lifestyle change, you really, really have to eliminate it and make sure you don't do it ever again,
wow,
because it creeps back in. You've been raised on all of these foods, flavors, and seasonings, and your body craves it.
hmm
And so I had to learn how to understand I had the control.
we want to break the addiction. I'm trying to figure out how, do you have any tips of, I know it's a struggle every day, but we're all in it together. There had to be some things that work for you that we need to all take back and implement. So can you give us, a couple of key things that really helped you to stick with it as best you can? I mean, we all kind of
Yeah.
fall off the wagon and have to get back up.
Well, when I look at my husband of 47 years now,
Oh,
and
wow.
my children, that I was killing them.
Wow. Wow.
And
As
if
a
that
cook.
doesn't, as a cook, and if that doesn't wake you up, nothing will.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I had to teach
I didn't
myself.
expect that answer, but I mean, you said a lot.
Yeah, I had to teach myself to teach them healthy living practices.
Wow.
I had to let them know that sugar was our enemy,
Wow.
salt was our enemy. And while we are addicted and adjusted to the flavors that it's in everything, we have to make a conscious effort to have some control over that. And
Wow.
so starting to teach healthy living practices to my children and myself first.
Right. And
And
I
then,
I know that it's not quite on topic in terms of heart health, but I remember listening to this researcher who she researches about brain health, and they said, well, Dr. Delamonte, well, what do people need to do? And she said, teach people how to cook.
That's right.
And that's what I'm hearing you say, that, that's
But you
something I was
can't just
raised with
teach
too.
them how to cook, because when you're teaching them how to cook, you have to teach them how to shop,
Right, right.
select the right foods. You have
The
to teach them
science
how
of it.
they have to read the labels.
Right.
You have to teach them how, if you buy a product and it has this, know what the numbers are on in the content of the food that you buy, and then teach the little ones. The little
Yes.
ones grow up looking at commercials. The little ones grow up saying, "Oh, I want that."
Right. And they're
So
impressionable.
they're impressionable, and that was the key for me. That was my spark for to start heart to heart education.
Wow.
And so
Well,
I ran into Dr. Krabb in my process, Dr. Deborah Krabb, who I hope you get to see. And we were having conversations, and she was telling me, the devastations, and giving me real education about heart disease. And I told her what I was trying to do. And we became so close. She's
wow.
she's 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 like my baby. I mean, you
She
know,
can be your Galentine.
she is my truly my Valentine, because we traveled on that train to Harrisburg, and we talked about what we were going to say to the legislators and why we were fighting for the rights of health, heart health, and healing for our Black communities.
Right. Well,
And
that is a perfect segue, because we have you here, and now we're joined by Dr. Deborah Krabb, MD. Dr. Crabbe was rated in 2022 by Philadelphia Magazine as a top doc. She graduated from Howard University College of Medicine. She is board certified in cardiovascular disease and echocardiography. She has authored numerous pieces and conducted a myriad of frequently cited studies. She's also a professor at Temple University's Lewis Katz School of Medicine. There's so much more that I could say about this incredible Black woman physician, but I'll let her knowledge speak for itself. Your testimony about her dedication and just being a real personable and sincere person started to, speak for itself as well. So feel free to
may,
chime
may,
in.
may I just say this? She probably
Sure.
won't say it, but the American Heart Association absolutely loves and adores Dr. Deborah Krabb.
Oh, that's really kind. You
Yes.
guys, I'll be quiet in a minute.
And welcome to Her Health Matters. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Linda and I go back a ways. I remember that trip to Harrisburg. I mean, we were fired up, and we just knew we were going to, change the world.
Change the world.
Yeah, a little ride.
In one trip. Well, it's a process, and I mean, it's definitely something that is worth chipping away at. I was looking at one of your articles, what are the risk factors for heart disease in women, and you quoted a statistic from the American Heart Association that 1 in 3 women in the United States will die of heart disease. That's an alarming statistic. Does that same statistic hold true for Black or African American women?
Well, the problem of the woman of color is a little bit different. We have, unfortunately, the claim to fame of really doing worse from practically every cardiovascular illness that you can imagine. I can't think of one where we actually do better.
Wow.
And that's true particularly for women who have diabetes or other multiple risk factors. And right now we're in the middle of seeing the other end of the spectrum, because we also have a preponderance of African American women who are getting caught up in the maternal health crisis, which, is devastating our country.
Wow. Well, clearly just laying the numbers out really should help the whole Her Health Matters family understand that they need to stop what they're doing. You put your whatever you're doing, put it down and gather around, because this is really life-saving information. We have Miss Linda Fields, we have Dr. Deborah Krabb, we have someone who is an expert in heart health with the qualifications as a physician, and someone who has lived experience. That's experience I don't want. I don't want that lived experience myself. You know, all of us, I think, have had the family experience, but we want to reiterate that we have people who are on the front lines in their lives in helping to alleviate this problem. I'm Dr. Sofia Shabazz, the host of Her Health Matters, and a family physician myself. So these are all very important things to all three of us. So let's getting into a little bit more specifics. Can you help our audience understand what are some of the risk factors for heart disease? I mean, some of the things we can't change, but I mean, we need to know, are we at risk?
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny you should mention and say in your statement some of the things you can't change, because most of the risk factors you have control over.
Oh, wow.
There's a couple of them that you actually don't. And when I usually give this talk around town, I kind of point that out, because a lot of times when these things happen to people, they feel like, oh my goodness, everything's out of control. Right. I can't do anything about it. It was completely inherited. Well, there are a small percentage of people who actually inherit things like cholesterol abnormalities that pass down, or, predispose them to having early heart attacks. But a lot of the risk factors are preventable and controllable. For instance, smoking. Smoking is something you can choose not to do.
I mean, it's not easy, but it's
not easy, but you can quit smoking. Okay? And the thing about smoking is that when you quit smoking, your risk for heart disease declines, and it declines rather briskly. Within the first 3 years of stopping smoking, your risk declines so that you have only a little bit higher risk than somebody who never smoked within 3 years. So that's why we encourage people to really try the best that they can to quit smoking.
And use all the tools at their disposal. I have to fight people about medicine for quitting smoking. I'm like, you're taking medicine 10 times a day with them doggone cigarettes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, and now there are some options, for various ways of trying to quit, but which we didn't have in the past. But smoking is one of them. The second one of them is, if you have diabetes, control your blood sugar. Now, unfortunately, diabetes is a condition that is not just defined by their elevation in your blood sugar. In other words, if you control your blood sugar, you don't get, unfortunately, once you get diabetes, it doesn't correct everything else that goes wrong in diabetics. However, we know that if people have a hemoglobin A1C that is less than 7, that is associated with a better outcome. And we also know that those people who have hemoglobin A1Cs above 7, particularly double digits, are associated with more vascular events and more vascular complications.
So just for people who may not have diabetes or don't know what the hemoglobin A1C is, that's how we keep track of what your blood sugar is doing on average. So, like, if you say, oh, that's because I just ate a cookie, then, it doesn't matter. That's not going to affect your hemoglobin A1C because you had a cookie the morning you had your blood drawn. It helps us know what your blood sugar is doing over time. So she's saying if it's under control, then your risk of having a cardiovascular problem is so much less, and that goes up when things are out of control.
Now, I know, Dr. Shabazz, I mean, you take care of patients as well, and I unfortunately have seen women and a couple of men, take care of men too, come into my office and have hemoglobin A1C. The highest I've ever seen is 18.
A lot of time the lab won't even report 18. They'll just say it's over 15.
Yeah.
It's high.
I don't know which lab it was, but I can verify you on multiple occasions, 18.
Wow.
I mean, I was just astounded. That's the highest I've ever seen. And you can
Yeah.
imagine that person had many of the manifestations of the complication. That person already had a heart attack, they already had
Hmm.
some kidney disease. Um, and so, I mean, it's just,
I got my little reputation over here because I will cuss you out.
oh, I will too. I will be off on that person, by the way, because
Oh, she
that,
gets on me. She
that
gets on me.
particular
Believe me, and my husband.
that particular person, um, you know, they had done so much better before and had was able to get it down. So it was from just deciding I don't care anymore.
So
And
like a depression maybe?
I don't know if they were really depressed, but you know, they just were like, I'm gonna, you know, forget it, I'm done. But the
So
thing
like
about
if someone were to be, really having these complications and the cardiovascular complications, and they may have a blockage or, you know, heaven forbid a heart attack, what would that look like, especially for women? Are there some special things that women need to be looking out for
well,
to
for women,
know?
the problem with women is that number one, they tend to get undertreated,
Mm,
they tend to get under recognize their risk. And African American women in particular, I would say African American followed by Latinx women, they don't understand the availability of preventive strategies and
hmm.
treatments to kind of circumvent their risk. And they are completely undereducated about heart disease. You know, 20 something years ago, when campaigns like Heart Truth and Go Red was, you know, coming on board, it was
Hmm.
the nation's women across the board who were underrepresented and in terms of their understanding of their risk for heart disease. But it turns out that over time, some of these campaigns have penetrated into the communities, and there's been an increased awareness. But
Hmm.
you know, the problem is that in the communities of color, these educational programming and awareness campaigns have not penetrated. They just have not. And I practice in North Philadelphia, and I can tell you it is not in North Philadelphia. Okay.
Now,
So,
I kind of have two big bullets that I know come up for me in my practice a lot. One area I feel like, oh, could I be doing more here? But, we have limited time in primary care. And then another where sometimes it becomes frustrating because, we have to have a full toolbox and not like cut off one avenue. One
definitely.
is, in terms of lifestyle and diet, sometimes I feel like I might not be spending enough time, emphasizing how some of those dietary changes could help, or being specific enough. Are there certain key dietary changes or factors that, if you had to, as a family doc, I'm busy, if I had to just pick two or three things that I need to emphasize to people to say, listen, do this, don't do that, do more of this, do less of that in terms of lifestyle and diet?
I think for me, when my practice, particularly when I'm dealing with diabetics, let's talk
Hmm.
about that because we were talking about that group just a minute ago. I try to get them to concentrate on their hemoglobin A1C and
Okay.
get it less than 7. And the reason, my rationale for that is that when you do that, you get bang for the buck.
Okay.
When your hemoglobin A1C goes down, and this is the part of diabetes that I think the most of the lay people don't understand, is it's a systemic condition that affects multiple different organ systems and pathophysiologic systems. So just because you have an elevated sugar alone, it's not the only manifestation, unfortunately, of diabetes, or else we'd all be cured. You just control your blood sugar and everything else would correct. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. But what does happen is that the things that the elevated blood sugar has a negative impact on, when you correct it, that does improve. For instance, things like your cholesterol. So if you happen to have an elevated triglyceride level, which is part of your cholesterol panel, as you know, when
Hmm.
you get better control of your diabetes, all of a sudden then your triglyceride levels will fall. And your
Right.
HDL level, which is your good cholesterol that is protective from heart disease, will help increase. So for
People
one,
are surprised by that. Like if you're talking about cholesterol, which is sort of like the fats, and then you tell people, oh, well, if you work on the sugars, it's going to help these types of fats, where they're like, what would one have to do with the other? But it does.
It does, and so they're all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I deal with the patients that have diabetes, I really try to get them to focus on the hemoglobin A1C, because I get blood sugar control, I get their hemoglobin A1C less than 7, I get bang for the buck from that. And then I get an added benefit of their cholesterol also going down. And in some cases, if they're borderline, they may go to normal, but in other cases, at least I will get a reduction. So
are there certain types of diets that are associated with better heart health? Like you hear about the Mediterranean diet or the African heritage. Oh gosh, I can't remember what term they gave it, to be more ethnically inclusive in terms of certain diets that are not soul food diets, or keto. Everybody was keto crazy.
Yeah, everybody is experimenting with different types of diets. I personally, and there's been some controversy too recently, I think, on the DASH diet, but I think that on the Mediterranean diet, probably, if you can do it, is a very good diet. Mm-hmm. But I think diets that are low fat, and I'm sure you know this, you probably tell your patients the same thing, Dr. Shabazz, but that are low fat and high fiber, and you get rid of these fatty meats, such as eating beef and a lot of pork, and lean meats, and
right.
and are the diets that most people will say, regardless of the changing of the names and the way.
Yeah, I try to keep it super simple, like lean protein, non-starchy vegetables.
Exactly. I mean, that really does work. And the other thing about, if you're diabetic, is that when you control your blood sugar, you not only get the blood sugar, hemoglobin A1C down, you get a point for that. You get the cholesterol down, you get a point for that. But in the beginning, particularly if you just concentrate on controlling on your blood sugar, you lose weight. You lose a little weight in the beginning.
Right.
So here, with one maneuver, I get 3 benefits.
Okay, so that's power pack, bang for your buck.
That's power pack. That's what I usually do with my patients. Now, the other patients with high blood pressure, some people will tell you all kinds of things about sodium, but there is definitely a distinct group of us who are very salt sensitive. And I try to get folks to be more cognizant of their salt intake, and it's very, very hard. Many years ago, before COVID, the FDA was trying to work with companies to decrease the salt content in their food.
Right.
And as
I realized, you should basically never eat soups.
Right, exactly.
Any kind of kid. If you look at it, it's like I had to just put it back, because
I know, it's crazy though.
All of them are so bad.
And salt is biblical, right? Because this was used even 2,000 years ago to preserve food and to make it last longer. And so I understand that, but there's a lot of excess salt too, though, that's being put in our food that are just unnecessary.
Right. And now, I wonder, Mrs. Fields, what are some of the things, like, from the patient perspective, did you really struggle with the most? She's talked about sugar. She's talked about salt, eating too much meat. We didn't really touch on how a lot of my patients are terrified of taking a statin. And I'm like, okay, nobody wants to take medicines, but I'm like, okay, sometimes people have had a heart attack and they don't want to take the statin, or they've had a stroke. They don't want to take the statin.
Well, I could tell you part of the reason that they don't I didn't like the statin was because it caused severe cramping. It would wake me up out of my sleep. And then, like Dr. Krabb said, the people don't listen to Black women when you go to the doctor. If you don't have a Black doctor, they don't listen. They put you on a scale based on statistics, and you're not a person. And they issue this medicine to you, and you say, well, you need it because of this, that, and the other. Don't tell me I need it because. Tell me, what can we do to avoid that and find something, an alternative that can help me. Because what happens with many people that I know, and it did with me, I'm going to admit and tell the truth, I stopped taking it. When I realized, but I didn't realize at first because they don't tell you about the side effects. So you spend years or months trying to figure out, why do I feel this way? You know, what is causing this? And I don't feel like I'm getting better, and you get the hopelessness, and that just sends you
So,
into
Dr. Krabb, is there any reliable tips that you might have, like something that someone could do to make it less likely that they have that side effect? Because, I mean, this is something that many, many people are complaining about.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was an intern, I'll tell you how old I am now. When I was an intern, statins hit the market. And when they first hit the market, there was a lot of concern that these drugs, because they are going to affect the cholesterol that's made in the liver, are going to have an impact on liver function, and that we're going to have a lot of other issues. But now, these drugs have been on the market for over 30 years. There's a well-established side effect profile. The more difficult ones that came out, there were a couple that came out during that 30-year period that did cause some alarm. They've been taken off the market. So there's really a good group of medications that are pretty well tolerated. They're very safe, and they really do help with your outcome from heart disease, lower your cholesterol, and improve decrease the progression of your disease. Now, that being said, there are some people who will develop the myalgias. Now, the problem is that
that's muscle aches, y'all.
That's the muscle aches. Yes, forgive me. Yes, it's the muscle aches.
And spasm,
Right. And they can be very painful. They're not very fun, and they can discourage. There's a number of maneuvers, though, that when the patient has a really good indication for having that medication, like yourself, Linda, that we can do to try to maneuver around that problem. So it's kind of like what I call medical tweaking. Okay. So for some people, the normal thing is that we tell you to take this particular medicine every day. Well, maybe that's a little bit too strong for you. Unfortunately, the newer statins that have come out have a very long duration in your bloodstreams. They last a long time. So sometimes it's just a simple maneuver of changing the dosing schedule. So instead of taking it every day, taking it 3 times a week. My sister, for instance, has this problem, and she had to change hers, and now she takes it 3 times a week. She doesn't get any muscle cramps. She still gets a lowering of her LDL, and she gets the benefit of the drug.
Make sure you tell your doctor, because they need to change how they write the prescription, because nowadays the insurance company, if you're not getting it refilled in a certain frequency, then your doctor's going to be dinged, because your refill rate is going to drop below a certain percentage.
That's awful. But I have to say,
maybe Linda can do something about that. That's the government, Linda.
Yes. Help us, please.
That's the government.
We have to do some lobbying around that, and educating people, because these pharmaceuticals are vicious, and they put a lot of unnecessary pressure on the docs, and the patients suffer as a result of it. So yes, we can talk about forming a proposal for policy with our legislators, and I will personally carry it to Washington, D.C. and to Harrisburg, to make sure that our legislators are educated about this.
Yeah, because I get stressed about it. I want to respect my patients' wishes, but I know that I'm gonna get demerit if they don't listen to me.
So, but the one thing that I have to say is, Dr. Krabb, what I want you guys to understand is that I keep saying that you're very unique. You're unique because you explain everything to your patients. And I'm going to tell you, I almost lost my husband. She can attest to that, because the doctors were not listening to us. And when I told them that I had a cardiologist, saved my husband's life.
Wow.
I had a cardiologist who was going to challenge some of the things that they were doing. They were like, well, but it wasn't until they found out that that particular cardiologist was one of their instructors, when they went through their residency, that they began to listen,
Oh.
So it's a real issue with heart disease, everything, health period.
Yeah.
Right.
That people have to insist that you hear them. But you know what? It works.
Sometimes we get stressed and we get pressed, and there are things that we see, and some of it might really be genuine concern. Some of it is just crunch for time. So there's a lot of different things in play, but really being reminded of your perspective on the other side of it, and being able to be flexible and meet you where you are, like Dr. Krabb was saying, is so important. So are there any parting thoughts that either of you have, maybe some resources for women to turn to learn more about how they can prevent or manage heart disease?
I am reinstituting the Heart to Heart website. I gave some information. I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
And it's the Heart to Heart Circle of Life.
Absolutely, yeah. So I started a website for the women of North Philadelphia, and if you go to www.cardiovascularequity.org, there is a myriad of information about heart disease in women, particularly women of color. And you can see some
Cardiovascularequity.org.
Yeah.
Cardiovascularequity.org. Okay, I got it. I had it right.
Cardiovascularequity.org. Cardiovascular Equity. I've been checking out my website, and we come up with the first or second.
You got the search terms.
I got the search terms down.
Now, this might be a little bit of a curveball, but I was talking with some friends about the only time I have ever did chest compressions on a person and seen them wake up. It was not in the hospital. It was at a wedding. So what do you have any thoughts about CPR and how important that is for people to have some working knowledge of, in terms of everyone having their little piece of the heart health pie and doing what they can to save a life when it comes to cardiovascular events?
I would say yes. Now, it's funny that you should mention that, because even in my own home, we don't have this corrected yet, and we probably should, because my own father, he died suddenly at home. And the sad story about it is that it was 4 days before my birthday. And had I been there, I would have been the one doing CPR on him.
Right.
Oh, and it's well known that, people of color, bystander CPR is less among people of color. Mm-hmm. So if you happen to have an event in the street or whatever, you're less likely to receive CPR than someone of a race. I've had in my career, imagine how disheartening this is. You're sitting here talking to someone, mm-hmm. and just like we're talking, and all of a sudden, out of the clear blue sky, mind you, these people were in the hospital, so there was something wrong with them. But I was interviewing them as part of their admission interview, and all of a sudden, 1 minute, they're like, gone. Mm-hmm. And it's very unnerving, but, we did CPR on these people, and they came back. So, yeah, it's quite powerful.
Well, this has been just packed with information that people can really use. Mm-hmm. You are tuned in to Her Health Matters with me, your host, Dr. Sofia Shabazz, on WURD Radio, Black Talk Media, airing on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, and streaming on WURDTV.com. I want to thank Mrs. Linda Fields and Dr. Deborah Krabb for being on today's program. We all learned a lot from both of you, and we hope that you come back and join us again. Dr. Krabb, I know you've been a supporter of Community Hero for the last several years, and we definitely look forward to hearing more from you at this year's Black Health Matters Conference that's coming up in April. And there's just so much for us to learn and so much to share. And before we end today's episode, I want to make sure to let you guys know about some awesome events and information. First, we'd like to share that Community Hero Action Group is hosting its third annual Pennsylvania Black Health Matters Conference from April 15th through April 18th. This event is free $3.99, and open to the public. The theme this year is Living Her Best Life. The conference will start on Saturday, April 15th at Vernon Park, located at 5800 Germantown Avenue in Philly. This is an in-person festival that starts at noon with live entertainment, free food, giveaways, health demos, blood pressure and glucose screenings, and much more. The following day, on April 16th, there will be free in-person CPR training being offered in select communities across the state to lift up the importance of heart health, as data has shown us that many women have died simply because the loved ones or those around them did not know CPR. Enrollment is limited, so you are encouraged to sign up early. Monday, April 17th, is an online day of highlights from past conferences and stories like the one you heard today from Mrs. Fields, from women sharing their heart health journeys, or really their health journeys in general, which will be posted periodically throughout the day on Facebook and Instagram. And the final day of the conference is an online day of virtual forums on topics ranging from the connection between heart health and oral hygiene to the dangers of implants and injections, toxic relationships, even how to make a skinny cocktail. So you can go to blackhealthmatterspa.org to register for this jam-packed free event. Again, that's blackhealthmatterspa.org to register and find out more information about the free conference. Next, get your running shoes out because the Broad Street Run is almost here. It's being held on April 30th at 8 a.m. The lottery to register closed on February 15th, so if you didn't sign up already, never fear, you can still participate in the virtual run. Registration for the virtual run is open until March 28th, 2023. Go to broadstreetrun.com to register and to get more information. Lastly, as part of Community Hero Action Group's ongoing Building the Block initiative, we encourage everyone to be informed and also engaged, which means exercising your right to vote every 6 months. There is a primary and general election every 6 months. There are a lot of different ideologies out there from candidates that can directly affect a woman's health. During this show, we discuss many health-related topics and things that can, conditions that can be detrimental to the health and wellness of Black women. It's critically important that we have public officials who are going to take our issues seriously and create laws and policies to address our issues. So do your research, vote in your best interest. We have judicial, municipal, and mayoral races coming up. The next election is our primary election being held on May 16th, 2023. Visit votespa.gov for more information to register to vote. If you're already registered, you still want to go ahead on there and check your status. The producer of this show is Community Hero Action Group, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to closing gaps in health and wealth disparities in the Black community. If you want to get involved with the work that Community Hero does, such as this show and other health-related initiatives, visit the website at communityheropa.org or email us at contactus@communityheropa.org. It takes all of us to get the work done. They say many hands make light work. Thank you so much to WURD's technical producer, Jordan, and our show's executive producer, Nicole Keels-Magruder, the executive director of Community Hero Action Group. Well, that ends this episode of Her Health Matters with me, yours truly, your host, Dr. Sofia Shabazz. Until next time, be healthy, be you, because your health matters. Peace. See you later.
The Philadelphia Orchestra and Kimmel Cultural Campus celebrates